We'll be starting shortly. This is Kate Lambert-Lee from MWR. If you are calling in, if you could please email us to let us know you're attending at mwrbattlecreek@dla.mil. Also, if you would like a copy of today's presentation, same email address, mwrbattlecreek@dla.mil. And we're also going to put in the chat box a survey. This is so First Command can we can let them know what presentations you'd like and how they can improve on their presentations they provide to DLA. We'll be starting, and I'd like to welcome Hunter Feraco. He's a financial advisor with First Command. He has joined us since I started several times and always providing information. There's time for questions and answers. And also, if you have stuff, we'll provide his contact information also if you'd like follow up in that survey. If you again would fill it out, it has a button. It will automatically submit it to him, so you don't have to worry about any of the hassle of saving it and uploading it. So anyways, I'd like to welcome Hunter on this gorgeous day. Welcome, Hunter, and everybody else.
All right, thanks, Kate. And welcome everybody. It's 11:30, so let's get it started. So first off, thank you for everyone joining. Two simple goals today. First, we want everyone here to realize that it's never been more important to take an active role in planning for your financial future. Now, you may ask why? Well, we're living in particularly challenging financial times right now. Unlike previous generations, most of us aren't going to be relying on a pension at some point. There's real uncertainty about the future of Social Security and what that holds for everybody and what we're contributing to. And there's justifiable concern over rising healthcare costs. The one thing we know for certain is healthcare gets extremely more expensive the older we get. And finally, on top of all of that, we're living longer than ever before, meaning we're going to need our money to last a lot longer than it ever did. So there's a couple ways you can respond to these challenges. One, you can become discouraged. You can resign from the fact that you're going to be working longer or retiring later, or you can acknowledge that this is going to be something that is going to happen in the future and take advantage of it now. So, which brings me to the second objective of what today's presentation is about. It's adapting a combination of careful planning and productive financial behaviors so that you can take control of your financial future. So 2016, First Command did a survey, and in that survey, they found that productive financial behaviors can boost feelings of security today and optimism for tomorrow. Meaning, if we put a plan into action, that optimism can drive us along or get us through those barriers that instead would be there. So that is exactly what First Command is here for. We help you pursue those long-term and intermediate goals. So what do I mean when I say productive financial behaviors? So if we're looking at this graph, one of the most important things from this study is that we found that your savings to debt ratio increases, meaning more savings and less debt, the feelings of financial security increase. Now, when I say productive financial behaviors, some of the things that might come to mind are probably all of those things that we should be doing, but we're probably not. So if you look at this graph, as one's savings to debt ratio increases, the feelings of financial security also come back. And this goes hand in hand with having a plan of what that actually means. If it's not written down, it's just a dream or a wish. And if it's written down, it's a goal or a plan. And that's how you have to evaluate what we're thinking of for the future. Another way to look at this is the survey also found that individuals and families who do have a financial plan through a financial advisor, regardless of their income, are more likely to have a positive savings to debt ratio and thus feel more financially secure without a plan. So when we go out and we hire the plumber or the electrician, we're not hiring the plumber's wife or the electrician's wife or spouse or whoever it is to figure out what we should do or how to fix the plumbing or the electricity. And this comes same thing with financial planning. We're not asking everybody down the road, but rather we're asking a professional and we're getting guidance on the best way to go through it. So at this point, I kind of like to ask, whether you're on the phone or in the chat, how many of you have a financial plan written down, and how many of you actually go back and review that financial plan, maybe on an annual basis? If you want to come off mute or just respond in the chat, how many people are actually doing this actively engaged? Okay. So for the people who are answering, any particular reason we didn't start, never heard of it, never even thought about it? Okay. As we get responses, I'll address them going forward. Okay, this is pretty self-explanatory. Nobody plans to fail financially, but lots of people fail to take the time to adequately plan. And it's not that a lot of people don't believe that planning could help. In fact, most people, when they ask, is like, hey, I think a financial plan is actually a good idea. But what a lot of people are doing are wishing and hoping for financial success. And let me show you what that actually means. Right now, and I'm sure everyone can kind of relate, everything that happened in March 2020, you found out real quick if you had a sufficient emergency fund or if you had cash on hand to get you through those trying times. So more than 3/4 of all Americans live paycheck to paycheck. That means a lot of people are only 1 month away from being in serious financial trouble. And almost half, 40%, haven't set aside an adequate emergency fund. All right, let's read some of these comments before I continue. Do a plan, you find life happens, more than save money than I'm going to do with it. Okay. Okay, so it sounds like a lot of people have parts of a plan, have pieces of a plan, but maybe you weren't sure how to put them all together or what it actually means. Whether you plan on retiring in the next 20 years, 10 years, 5 years, maybe even this next year or down the road. First Command is a good place to consider to make sure you have all those pieces put together before you make that jump. Okay, looks like Don, more concerned with saving the money than what I'm going to do with it. Can you elaborate on that, Don, through the chat? Okay. Another big whammy when it comes to financial planning are credit cards. Credit cards are great. Yes, they help build credit, but did you know it's mathematically impossible to have an 800 plus credit score unless you've already paid over $100,000 in interest in credit cards? So yes, building your credit is good. What is the reason for building your credit? And if we're holding balances, why is a better question. Being able to avoid these pitfalls plays a big part in your financial success and your financial future. So the average person is not adequately insured, and that potentially puts anyone dependent on them in serious financial risk. The value to your family or your dependents is significantly more having you around than it is if you were to be dead. So by that, I mean, if we make $100,000 a year and we expect to work for 30 more years, you know, we're expecting to bring in roughly $3 million. But if you croak and you kick the bucket the next year and you're not adequately insured, how is your family, your spouse, your kids going to continue to get by? Is college something you planned on paying for? Are there different goals that you had that you wanted to accomplish? And it's making sure that all of those goals or those dreams that you talked about are sufficiently covered with or without you. And that's probably the most important part. Oh, in regards to the credit score, when they do the math on credit scores, the only way to get an 800 plus credit score is if you have paid a minimum or pretty close to over $100,000 in interest on those credit cards. So yes, an 800 credit score looks good, but you had to climb a mountain to get there. This is probably a great one to adjust for the chat as well. How many people think they have a sufficient emergency fund? If I said, hey, what are your expenses for the month? Times them by 3, times them by 6. Do you have enough cash on hand to cover any unexpected emergencies? Life insurance is still tax free. And again, a different way to look at it, 80% or 4 out of 5 Americans, again, are not expected to meet all their financial needs in retirement. So as I talk, you can probably read through these and let me know if this relates to anybody. Has anyone ever thought, oh, now's not the right time? I want to do this first. I have debt to pay off. I don't make enough money. Oh, it's too late. I should have done something before. When you read through these, how many people here have probably used that excuse at one point or another to avoid planning or putting it off something that maybe you didn't want to do? You can answer in the chat. You can come off mute, whatever you're comfortable with. Or maybe there's something on here that I didn't mention. Okay, so what does waiting really mean? Investment success is dependent on 3 variables. 1, our input, and that's how much you invest. 2, our rate of return, how much you earn on that investment. And 3 is time, how long that money stays invested. So of those 3, which of these 3 variables do you think people have the least amount of control over? Is it input, rate of return, or time? All right, yeah, that's right. Rate of return is correct. Now, which of the 3 do you think the majority of people are most worried about? Input, rate of return, or time? Well, you would think it'd be time, you think it'd be input, but the actual answer, and it's ironic, is rate of return. Most people worry about rate of return, the one variable that they have the least amount of control over. So let me show you how focusing on time, and as soon as you get started, can give you a huge edge over the people fretting about the short-term gyrations and that rate of return. Okay, in this simple example, Lisa starts saving $200 a month for the next 10 years from age 30 to age 40. She puts roughly $24,000 into her investment. Dylan, on the other hand, hasn't started saving. Dylan starts at age 40. Again, he's doing $200 a month from age 40 to age 65. Now, assuming both have an 8% return, what do you notice about the differences when they both reach age 65. That's right. Compound interest, just even on an 8% return over that amount of time, we've had significantly more time to accumulate those dollar bills. And of course, the sooner you start, the more advantageous it is for your retirement accounts. A good rule of thumb in terms of how your accounts work is called the rule of 72. We'll take something like number 72 and we'll divide it by the rate of return. So in this example, it's about 7 to 8%. 72 divided by 8 is roughly 9, about 10 years. So we would expect that investment to double roughly every 10 years. Is a good back of the napkin math or something to consider. So more time for your money to work for you. And at some point in the future, your money could be making more than you do in a year. And that's when you know you're on track. Okay, a big question we often see is the market is too high, or is it a good time to invest? There's a difference between timing the market and time in the market, and that can make a big difference. So with the market near an all-time high, is it really a good time to invest? So if you just won the lottery and you're about to invest millions of dollars, then yeah, that's probably a pretty reasonable question. But if you're like the 99% of us, or the majority of us, you probably only plan on investing as much as you can afford. So if it's that simple and easy to execute strategy that can actually help you benefit from the market ups and downs, we actually use a strategy called dollar cost averaging. Is anyone familiar with dollar cost averaging? Or does anyone here use dollar cost averaging when it comes to investing? You can either come off mute or answer in the chat. Come back to the chat right now. Okay, looks like a lot of people have plans, not sure if they follow them. Some people have talked about planning, don't have a plan. More concerned with savings, what you're going to do with it. Is everyone here contributing to their TSP, at least getting their 5% match? Okay, some do, some don't. All right, I understand that. Yep, I think dollar cost averaging is about consistency of investing. Yep, dollar cost averaging is just simply I invest every single month on a particular day. I don't care if the market goes up. I don't care if the market goes down. It's being consistent with the investment. If you looked at a graph of dollar cost averaging versus timing the market or buying the dip, as they like to call it, you'd come to find out that dollar cost averaging has roughly the same return as you buying the dip or timing the market, with significantly less stress and same amount of time to get there. All right, so this is how dollar cost averaging works. This blue line represents a typical stock or a mutual fund over time. This assumes that every single month we invest $300 into this mutual fund. On month one, we invest $300. It's $6 a piece. We buy 50 shares. Month two, price moves up to $8, buy 37.5 shares. And by month three, price is all the way up to $10. We buy 30 shares. So if you just watch your investment go from $6 to $8 to $10, how do you think the majority of people are feeling right now, watching your investment go up? People probably feel pretty smart. Hey, I'm on top of the world. I'm making money. This is easy. Why don't I keep doing this? Okay. If we continue out the example, you can see that on month four, price stays around the same $10 a share. We buy 30 more, and then the price starts dropping. Then you see it go all the way down to $2. So you just watch your investment go from 6 to 8 to 10. We're feeling good, we're making money, and all of a sudden it drops all the way to $2. What do you think the majority of people or people without a plan are thinking at this point? You can answer in the chat. Now, obviously, you know the answer because you can see the values filled out. But on average, if you didn't know that, what do you think the majority of people are feeling at that point, watching their investment go to $2? Jump ship? Frantic? Yep. Yeah, well, sometimes the S&P drops like that. That's true. The 100-year trend says it only goes up, so you'll be lucky to catch the dip. Okay. Finally, when we continue out the example into month 8, 9, and 10, and we complete this, we can see that over the past 10 months, we invested $3,000. We have a total of 685 shares. And if we took the average price of $6 a share times 685, we come out with 4,110. So now we have $1,110 worth of profit. Where do you think that extra $1,110 came from? Yep, share price increase. That's true. But what else? Right, shares bought at a lower price. So when the most people are selling or freaking out because the market is going down, it's very counterintuitive to say to yourself, maybe I should be buying, or maybe this is a good opportunity to buy. And you can kind of think of it as if you don't plan on touching that money for the next 5, 10, 15 years, anytime the market goes down, you can think of it as a sale. But also another advantage of dollar cost averaging is that we are consistently investing every single month, no matter what happens to the market. We can ignore CNN, we can ignore Fox News, we can ignore MSNBC or any other news channel, fear mongering or getting everyone riled up to the point of it doesn't matter what happens, but I continue to buy consistently over time because I don't plan on touching the money anyways. So a good way to negate or manage your money in a positive way is to use dollar cost averaging. Okay. Now, along with investing, again, the best time to be buying insurance is also when we were younger. So another potential planning pitfall associated with procrastinating is life insurance is often an essential component in a financial plan. As the graph demonstrates, the cost of life insurance goes up with every birthday. So putting off the decision to purchase that coverage not only runs a risk of leaving anyone dependent on you vulnerable, but it could also mean a significantly higher premium once you do get around to securing that coverage. There is unfortunately one or more significant risks associated with postponing the purchase of life insurance. What if a medical condition arises before you act? Now, there's a real possibility you won't be able to obtain coverage, or that even if you're able to obtain coverage, the cost is going to be significantly different. So that's why establishing a foundation of life insurance as early as possible makes so much sense. Okay, so back to the example of Lisa and Dylan. So Lisa was the first to take action. She bought a $500,000 permanent insurance at age 30 for a monthly premium of $318. Again, Dylan waited until age 40 for the same amount of coverage, and the results were much different. He's paying closer to $516 a month. And let's see how these decisions would affect the cost over time. Now, are you surprised that Lisa will pay significantly less in the long run, despite the fact that she paid premiums for 10 additional years? Is anyone kind of surprised by the results that you see? Lisa's paying 10 more years on that same exact policy, but she paid significantly less in premiums. Insurance coverage varies from person to person, but if we just took this straight line example, all things being equal, this would be a pretty reasonable difference in premiums. Oh, 500,000. Yes, $500,000 worth of coverage. Okay, so the problem with waiting. So first school of thought is, oh, it's okay to postpone. I'm young. I'll invest when I'm older, when I have more money to do it. This is an idea that everyone goes through kind of a natural accumulation period. They'll spend their limited resources on buying things like furniture and appliances and clothes, but we don't really buy that theory. Our experience, or my experience personally, working with hundreds of different clients, is as life progresses, things don't get easier, things actually get more complicated. So if you are able to take advantage of it now and set your finances on autopilot, this is not something that will be as much of a burden in the future when you do get married and you do have those two kids, and now we're figuring out how to pay for the mortgage, and we probably have car loans, maybe one, possibly two, and then we're figuring out how do we juggle this entire thing, and then we want to talk about investing, and then our next question to ourselves is, where am I going to get the money to do that? So if you expect life to get simpler going forward, that's just not the case. So if we're able to establish sound, productive financial behaviors as early as possible in life, you can get off to the fast start that's so crucial to ultimate financial success. Now, I'm not saying, hey, pack everything away, you can't buy things, you can't enjoy life. You can have a plan and you can have a life. And that's the big advantage of planning out different aspects of your life. What does our retirement look like? And what do I want my life to look like? And how do I make those work together? Everybody is unique and everyone's situation is different. And that's what makes having a financial plan or working with somebody imperative to how you want your life to be. If you're reviewing on an annual basis, or if you're talking with someone about your goals, then it makes it significantly easier to kind of pass or shoulder that burden to someone else to help you figure it out. And that's one of the big advantages of working with First Command is we're able to do that. We often need to find that comfortable balance between what we're spending in the present and what we're investing for the future. And then also being able to commit on living on less than we actually earn. If we're living off credit cards or we're relying on future income, if we're relying on future income, then to be paid back later, then we're already digging ourselves a deeper hole. So a lot of people might ask, all right, so how do I begin a financial plan? Or how do I start allocating towards that financial plan? And it all depends on your goals and your time horizon for achieving them. But regardless of what amount is needed for each of you, we found that one of the best ways to consistently save and invest is by adopting a very simple approach. And this simple approach is called paying yourself first. Now, it is as simple as it sounds. It's making sure that of everyone that gets a piece of your paycheck, you also get a piece of that too. So every month, the first dollars you spend are the dollars that you should owe to yourself. Whether that's $100, $200, $500, that's putting into a separate account saying this is paying myself for my future, whether it is investing or putting it into savings. So embracing a pay yourself first approach is one of the most important steps when it comes towards achieving your financial success. Let me say that again. Embracing a pay yourself first approach is one of the most important steps when it comes to your financial success. And again, that's step one on any financial plan. Once you commit to paying yourself first, your plan's already in action. So oftentimes what you might think is the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to walk in the office and they're going to start pitching me a bunch of products and different services and trying to get me to buy a bunch of different things that I don't even know if I need. Unfortunately, we do it the other way around. We find out what's important to you, what your goals are, and then we plan accordingly. Some things fit really well with some people and other things don't make any sense. So if we're able to understand what your unique unique goals or what your future outlook looks like, we're able to plan accordingly. So being able to sit on here and saying, "Oh, I don't need a plan. I got this and this," may be significantly different than one of your coworkers or somebody else that you work with or live around. Everybody's unique. Everybody's situation is different, and the best way to approach it is to have a well-tailored, specific plan based on those needs. So maybe what's important to you is having that big house with the view of the lake, or 5 bedroom, 6 bath, in that perfect neighborhood. Maybe it's taking vacations. I don't know about cruises right now, but or maybe international travel, but maybe it's going sightseeing or seeing different places or traveling around the world at some point. Or maybe it is just investing in your kids or those grandkids, or making sure that they're taken care of. Obviously, college is getting more and more expensive. So if you start planning now, or if that's something you plan on paying for, of course, legacy goals are important to some people too. And of course, if we do it just right, maybe active retirement is in the cards as well. Now, a lot of people are probably thinking, as I went through those slides, yes, 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 I want all of those, but I don't know where to start. And there's nothing wrong with that. But unless you're printing your own money or have some 7-figure inheritance you plan on taking in, it's essential to start planning for those things that you want now. So set goals. It's hard to plan for wishes. Have a plan for pursuing your goals. Knowing what you have to do removes a lot of anxiety from the process. And finally, take action. After all, what good is a plan if you don't act on it? How many people have sat down with a budget or with a plan and said, all right, this is what we're going to do, only to come to find out, a week into it or maybe a month into it, we're not really following it like we thought we would. We're kind of spending a little bit over here, or you're kind of making exceptions. Has anyone gotten to that point where they're kind of surprised? Well, maybe not surprised, but all right. I guess not surprised that they didn't finish the plan. How many people would say they like the idea of a plan, but never stuck to it? Has that been the case for anybody? You can answer in the chat, come off mute. Where have you seen the biggest hiccups or the biggest mountains to try to get over when it comes to executing the plan, if you have one? Yep, emergencies, that's a good one. So I will address the emergencies one. When a lot of people plan, hey, we're going to invest so much money here, we're going to need this, we're going to need that, only to come and find out, oh shoot, I need an emergency now, I have to take cash out. If we start investing or we start too quickly when it comes to investing, we kind of defeat the purpose of investing if we're starting to pull out of our investments to pay for something that we could have paid for in cash. And so those are kind of those little hiccups or pitfalls we kind of want to avoid when it comes to planning, making sure we have that established emergency fund so we're not relying on pulling out of investments or credit cards. Yep, emergencies, 6 months of expenses. I'm sure a lot of people can relate with March 2020 and COVID and everything, where they were at and if they were able to adapt easily. So when it comes to setting those goals, it's one thing to say, oh, I want to be successful, or I just want to live the good life, or make sure I have enough money so I can do X, Y, and Z. It's easy to come up with these general goals, but here are a few ideas for, what something more specific might look like. Maybe it is getting rid of those credit cards and start planning for the next 1 to 5 years. Maybe it is cutting them up and getting rid of them, or it is paying the down payment on the car and making sure that car is paid off in 3 years, or is really planning for that vacation. It's not on a whim or just out of the blue. Hey, let's go on vacation. It's, hey, we plan to go on vacation the next year. Let's start setting money aside. And it's realizing that a little bit over time can add up to a lot of it when you need it. Exactly. Paid off credit card to have extra money a month. A lot of people kind of get lost in the sauce when it comes to credit cards. Oh, I can afford that payment, or that payment's easy. We're paying $5,000 on a credit card, and our payments of $125 a month. Oh, I can afford the 125. We're losing focus. We're focusing on the wrong thing. We're focusing on being able to afford the payment as opposed to what does the balance actually look like and how that will eat into any gains that we possibly could have had before. And again, like I mentioned before, some of the best financial plans are personalized, flexible, and comprehensive. Personalized meaning they clearly reflect your circumstances, offering specific strategies for pursuing those goals. Flexible to the point that they can be easily modified, and when changes occur in your life and those goals, and they will, we can adapt and figure out what we need to do next. One of the biggest advantages of working with a financial planner is that when we do get to that fork in the road and we do have questions about which way to go, we can adapt easily. And finally, they're comprehensive. Now, comprehensive sounds like a nice word, and you're probably thinking, all right, comprehensive, what does that actually mean? Well, at first command, we define comprehensive financial planning as one that provides specific, integrated strategies for cash management, risk management, wealth accumulation, and management. So let's take a look at what these three cornerstones actually mean. Let me adjust some of these. The loan for my TSP for upgrades to an old farmhouse I bought. I was not sure if this was a good move or a bad move. So Angela, let's see. So, and I think a lot of people could see this in their TSP. Anybody who did take money from their TSP in 2020 probably saw that the market went up quite a bit. The C fund was up almost 30% on the year. S&I funds were up. We're doing pretty well too. And then obviously GNF funds do what they do. So it all depends on your personal preference. If upgrading that farmhouse, Angela, was the best move for you and your family, then yes, taking out money from the TSP made sense. But if somehow you had earmarked that money for retirement and we pulled it out early, now that $50,000 probably could have been more if it was still sitting and working for you. So it really comes to the trade-off. If it made sense for you and your family, then it was a good move. If somehow, can't take it back. But those are questions that we would walk through and talk about and game plan for. Is this the best move right now? Is there other money somewhere else we could tap into? And it's really just strategizing the best way and ultimately the most efficient way to accomplish some of those goals. So again, keep harping on it, but this is back to that emergency fund. Prudent cash management means managing your money wisely and efficiently by allocating your income. That's establishing and maintaining a budget to ensure that you're living on less than you make. How many people here actually have a budget that they evaluate once a month and go back and say, hey, we spent way too much over here, or we thought we were going to spend some over here? How many people on the chat or on the calls actually go through budget planning? Angela, if you just took it if you just took it last month, maybe that's something we could talk about if there is still time to reconsider the TSP loan or the withdrawal. But again, that sounds like a specific circumstance. We don't have to do it in the chat, but maybe afterwards we could talk about it. Yeah, savings account percentage is very low. That is true. But access to cash is immediate, and that's the most important part. I think what is happening in society right now is there's a very heavy focus on investing, but when it actually comes to comprehensive financial planning, it's not just investing, it's budgeting, it's defining goals, and it's figuring out, again, how to be most efficient with our money. The last thing you want to do is rely on a credit card when it comes to bridging any gaps between needing immediate cash. So yes, savings accounts, I get it. They don't return anything, but the access to cash and peace of mind it provides outweighs that percentage return. So again, kind of back to this credit card example. In this example, we have a $5,000 balance, 15% interest rates, and again, $125 a month payments that we all know we can afford. We're not focusing on the payments, we're focusing on the balance. So what does this actually mean over the next 5 years? So it'll take him almost 5 years to pay off his balance. And by the time he does, he'll have made payments totaling $7,000. That's an extra $2,000 in interest expenses that could have been invested somewhere else. So if you're, well, this is a good example, probably one of the most heavily marketed financial instruments out there are the credit cards. Credit card companies know your behavior probably better than you know yourself. So the fact that they want you to have a credit card or hold a balance, or maybe spending that $3,000 to get that middle seat on Spirit Airline down to Florida, was it worth spending all that money as opposed to not holding a balance and having a sufficient emergency fund to take care of any of those unexpected expenses? So as you can see, a lot of people are focused on the payments as opposed to what the balance is, and they end up paying significantly more over time. So the second of the three planning cornerstones is risk management, as in being prepared for all the risks that can potentially threaten your financial security. We'll kind of think of this as a plan B. So obviously we all hope for plan A, which we'll talk about in just a moment, is going to work and that we won't ever have to resort to plan B. But that's not always how life works. So when I talk about risk management in a financial plan, we're talking about insurances. Now, I understand insurances aren't sexy. They're not investments. They're not making you money. The most important part when it comes to insurance is providing that peace of mind for your family. It's managing that risk associated with property, like your car or your home. It's managing risk to your earning ability. And it's also managing the risk that you may or may not need extended care, such as long-term care. And it's also, and finally, managing the risk to the financial well-being of your loved ones. Should you die prematurely, what happens next? In terms of life insurance, or for people on this chat, how many people here think that if they were to kick the bucket tomorrow, today, that their spouse would still be able to afford the mortgage? And you can answer in the chat. Okay. Okay, my next question is, would the standard of living change for your spouse or for your kids should something happen to you? All right, Don, let me ask this a different way. Do you have private insurances outside of the DLA, or is this from the group life that you have with the DLA? Okay, good. Angela, that's a good point. It may not just be the cash. Now it's one person doing the work of two, and whether that is taking time away from work, doing stuff with the kids, appointments, etc. That's a really good point. I didn't even think of that. So life insurances, these help protect your financial goals or your family's financial goals. Now, life insurance just isn't a smart thing to do. It's the right thing to do for the people that you care most about. Whether that's providing your survivors the money they need to replace your income, again, paying off the mortgage or other outstanding loans. And finally, maybe there are college aspirations in the future. And how do we fund those? Now, if our income is cut in half, now we're thinking of different ways or different ways to provide. And that's why we look at permanent insurances for permanent needs and temporary insurances for temporary needs. And finally, the last cornerstone of comprehensive financial planning is that wealth accumulation and management. Some people think, hey, this is a fancy way of saying investing. But the only difference between wealth accumulation and management and investing is wealth accumulation and management is investing with a purpose. And that's a very important distinction. Investing with a purpose means that you have a specific written goals and a specific strategy for pursuing each one of those goals. Now, it's the opposite of the kind of undisciplined investing, or perhaps it's more accurate to call it speculating, that way too many people are engaged in. Is anyone here familiar with the GameStop incident or Robinhood? Does anyone have E-Trade, Charles Schwab? Does anyone do anything on the side? Now, how many people here think that they spend more time picking out the color of the couch than they do actually researching the stock pick? Yeah, Angela, sometimes the best strategy is to do nothing at all or set it on autopilot and let it work for you. Okay, so this was a research study done by Dalbar, and that showed over the past years from 1997 to 2016, the average stock fund investor had an annualized return of 4.8%. Does anyone know how much the S&P has returned over the past 15 years on average? Yep, so on average, from 1997 to 2016, roughly 7.7%. Now, when you look at this in 5 years, you might say, oh, $4,000, $5,000 difference, not that big of a deal. But what do you start to notice the longer you wait and how much different that compound makes when it comes to returns on your investment? What do you notice about after 20 years? It's almost $20,000 more. So many people would have been better off setting and forgetting and letting market run its course as opposed to trying to time it. And this study only takes into consideration what the return was of the average investor or the S&P 500. Now, some things that weren't taken into consideration is what about all those fees and taxes and different fees associated with moving that money around? Then we'll probably see our returns decline significantly. So something to consider when you want to get into trading or options or picking different stocks. There's not a game plan behind it or a rhyme behind that reason. We can start to see less than average returns, and this can significantly affect your retirement accounts. Exactly, Martha. Fees kill any sort of return. So again, investing with a purpose, wealth accumulation, and management. When it comes to part of that comprehensive financial plan, it's not about chasing the performance or by moving money around from one investment to another or taking the occasional, read it in the back of the newspaper or on a website, that hot stock, the next 100x, the next Amazon. It's about strategically investing and growing your money over time in an effort to achieve those specific long-term goals. Oftentimes, what you read, in a magazine or online or on Facebook, wherever it is they only tell you about the winners. They only tell you about the people that made it, that Bitcoin millionaire or that person who picked the hot stock. For every winner, there's 1,000,001 losers who did not get it in time or probably bought the top. But you never hear about them because those stories nobody wants to read. So be careful when it comes to picking up on a hot stock tip or thinking you're going to go it alone, because there are a lot more barriers than maybe you anticipated or you just haven't seen yet. But again, everybody is different, and it really comes down to what you're focusing on. If it is funding that retirement or is paying for a child's education or paying for a major purchase or event, whether that's an RV or going on vacation or transitioning to a new career or starting your own business, it really comes down to specific goals and what you want to do and why we invest. Now, I spent a lot of time describing and emphasizing the value of financial planning, comprehensive financial planning, but I'm going to let you in on a little secret. A financial plan by itself, no matter how well designed or how comprehensive, offers absolutely no assurance to be successful. Because at the end of the day, a plan is only as good as its execution. That's why we believe the delivery of your plan should be in the beginning of your relationship with your advisor and not the end. Sometimes all it takes is a little motivation to make sure that we're staying on track. And it's imperative that your advisor plays a continuing role as a financial coach. It's ensuring the proper execution of your plan, modifying your plan as your circumstances and goals evolve, or as tax laws change or new products enter the marketplace. It's staying up to date on how the marketplace is evolving around us. And finally, it's continuing to encourage and reinforcing the productive financial behaviors that we've identified as being so crucial to that financial success, i.e., paying yourself first. So this timeline, not to scale, obviously implementation plan would take much longer. But here's the importance of coaching from this perspective. So as you can see, goal setting, plan building, and plan implementation generally take longer than a few days or a few weeks, but we often evaluate on an annual basis. Does this plan still make sense? Do we need to reevaluate? Am I putting money in the correct spot? Does it make sense to maybe consider the Roth TSP over the traditional TSP, and why? What do our RMDs look like in the future? Did you know we have Medicare premiums coming up when we reach age 63 and 64? A lot of questions that maybe you've heard about, you've written down, maybe you meant to ask yourself. But when you get to that point, it may be too late or you didn't plan for it. And now we're paying significantly more than something maybe we didn't have to pay for. So the execution of your plan is going to span decades. In fact, it probably extends beyond that and probably beyond your life. What do those life insurance settlements look like, or your estate planning? Do we have a trust in place? What does the will look like? So it's this lengthy execution period that you're probably going to need knowledgeable guidance of a financial coach who can inspire you to stay the course and continue to practice those productive financial behaviors that we talked about at the beginning of the presentation. So frankly, it's our commitment to this ongoing coaching and the belief that what us sets First Command apart from other financial services. In fact, we feel so strongly about it. Our mission statement is actually coaching those who serve in their pursuit of financial security. Okay, so at this point, I'm almost done with the presentation. A lot of you are probably asking, all right, Hunter, I get it. I should have started 20, 30 years ago. Now what? Yeah, you're probably right. Sure, we should have started, but at this point, we can't go back in time. And a lot of you may be at that point, or I plan on retiring next year, or in 2 years, or in 5 years. At least that's what I think I'm going to do. But are you sure that is the right move? Have you considered different things going forward? And that's where First Command could be most beneficial to maybe someone who is considering that. A few things, after my federal benefits, am I electing the right things when I retire? And if I happen to kick the bucket in retirement, does my wife still keep her TRICARE insurance, for example? Are we making sure that we're having that aspect of the plan covered? Maybe stuff we've never looked at before. Also, it's considering what does Medicare look like at age 63 and 64 going forward? Have we considered again traditional versus Roth side? Am I putting too much in my traditional? Should I start contributing to the Roth? Do I even need to contribute to the TSP at this point? Are there better options for me? And it's evaluating all those together, again, based on your specific goals, and evaluating from there. So a lot of you may think, oh, okay, maybe it's not for me, but maybe you do know somebody who could also benefit from this. If you obviously see the power of planning, ask yourself why I didn't get started. Maybe there's someone younger or someone you think could benefit from this who isn't on the call, who you think could benefit. So I would appreciate you also passing that information forward if you think so. So while I was talking, was anyone ever thinking of these again? And maybe when I pay stuff off, or maybe I'll do it next month or next year. Market's too high, market's too low, it's a little risky. You guys can answer in the chat or come off mute and just give me your thoughts. Okay, at this point, I think Kate sent everyone a survey, or there is a survey link in the chat. I really appreciate it if you guys went through and filled that out. You think you could benefit from sitting down with First Command. I think it's a good idea for anybody. This is a free consultation based on our conversations. And I would tell this to everybody that worst case scenario, you sit down with us and you learn something. Best case scenario, you start working with us. And I'll leave it at that. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to come off mute, put them in the chat, and we will go from there. Thank you.
Thanks, Hunter. Again, this is Kate Lambert-Lee with MWR, and if you'd like a copy of the presentation and you're calling in, please email us at mwrbattlecreek@dla.mil. And if you'd like us to email you a copy of the survey, that email will work as well. And thank you all for joining us. And again, if you have questions for Hunter, he'll be available briefly.
Looks like Cynthia has a question. She asked any guidance on how to plan for healthcare costs into retirement.
The sooner the better. We know that Medicare premium lookbacks begin at age 63 and 64 for the first 2 years and continue thereafter. So if we're planning now, or considering something like that, that's one place to start, unless you had something more specific.
Yeah, I would say too, again, cost of Medicare, it depends on what insurance you have. So knowing that as well, something we can look at. If you're retired military and you have TRICARE and you're going to have Medicare Part B, your cost of hospital care and basic medical care shouldn't be too high. The risk there then is you end up in a facility or with a long-term care situation. And there are other ways to plan for that. There's specific insurances that are available that would help pay for the cost of ending up in a facility or something like that, or you just have to save a whole bunch of money. So kind of ties back to what Hunter was saying. The sooner you can come up with a game plan for it, the better. Yeah. Martha brought up a unfortunate truth, which is nursing homes are about $8,000 a month. That's not unheard of at all, and they can actually, unfortunately, be a good deal more than that. Again, that's in addition to whatever additional expenses you normally have. It's not like they say you don't have to pay your mortgage if a spouse is in a facility. So again, that's something that we offer as long-term care planning. Insurance is one option, but just having a game plan for the cost of that is incredibly important. A lot of folks think they got it kind of all sorted out, and then they look at that potential 8,000 a month, and it's a different story. Great question. Martha said she's going to the Holiday Inn Express. That might actually end up being more than 8,000 a month. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe not. You might not have the nurses that you hope for at the Holiday Inn Express, but you never know.
I will say this when it comes to long-term care, obviously the baby boomers, that generation is one of the largest generations to come through. And right now we're seeing on average 10,000 baby boomers are retiring every single day. And we expect that number to continue up into the year 2030. So if somehow you think long-term care facilities or things are going to get cheaper, healthcare is going to go down, in fact, it's probably going the complete opposite way. Because now everyone's got their hand in the pot trying to figure out how they're going to be taken care of.
So Cynthia was asking, is it the responsibility of the investor to set RMD after retirement, or is it automatically set by the portfolio? So it's kind of it depends on if you're doing this on your own or if you're working with somebody. If you don't have an advisor, it generally falls on the investor. Okay, but if you have an advisor, there's kind of an expectation that they're going to guide you through that process. I know folks who have left funds in TSP. They didn't used to allow you to take RMDs. And what she's referring to, Cynthia, is required minimum distributions. At age 72, you have to start pulling money out of your IRAs. You're now allowed to take them out of TSP, and it's a relatively painless process. I believe if you don't do anything, TSP will do that automatically. But if you have some other random IRA floating around out there's not necessarily a guarantee that that'll be done automatically for you.
So Martha, when it comes to assisted living and assets being spent down, if people are going to a long-term care facility, when it comes to Medicare kicking in, this only works for the first 20 days, and then you have to start footing the bill afterwards. And then if you ever want Medicaid to kick in, first you have to spend down all your assets to a certain point until you qualify for a certain level, and then Medicare or Medicaid will start picking up as much as possible, but probably not all of it. So that's why you're required to spend down. Now, there are ways around that. They do 5-year lookbacks if you are giving away assets at that point. Or long-term care, again, is a good way to project that spend down and kind of sets a cap on what is actually allowed to be spent down based on that type of insurance. So there are ways around that or ways to avoid that, or again, plan for it. An IRA or an ROD? It's an ROD.
I'm not familiar with, I saw that, what is better, an IRA or an ROD? I'm not sure what you're referring to with ROD. I haven't heard that before, if you want to specify. Oh, okay, gotcha.
Got it.
Go ahead, Hunter.
Got it. IRA, it all depends on when you get taxed. Similar to your TSP, if you're putting in the traditional side, we defer those taxes until retirement and we start drawing from it. Whereas a Roth, we front the money now, Uncle Sam gets his cut. Everything after that grows tax-free. Again, it's all preference and it's all based on each individual. So,
And the idea is if you think taxes, in most cases, if you think taxes are going to go up in the future considerably, then a Roth may be a better option in the short term, as long as you have enough time to get the benefits of tax-free growth. But to Hunter's point, it's kind of unique to each person and their tax rate and kind of what their situation is. With where rates are and where we expect them to go, a lot of folks are really leaning towards Roth IRAs. But again, that's not the correct answer for everybody always.
the last thing you want to do, taxes go up, to find out, hey, I'm deferring 24% just to pay 28 down the line. So it's a few things like that you want to watch out for.
Cynthia asks, is long-term care insurance a good investment then, or does it depend on your retirement income and assets?
I'll let you take this, Sean, but first I want to say this, Cynthia. I would never blend insurance with investments. Insurance is insurance, and investments are investments. And I'd keep it.
Yeah. So we believe if you can afford long-term care insurance, basically what you're doing is you're transferring risk, right? So anytime we use insurance, we look at the risks of a portfolio, we look at the risks of a financial plan and say, how much of this do we want to take on ourselves? And how much of this do we want to transfer to somebody else? So if this thing occurs, someone else is paying for it. And there's a sunk cost most of the time, sometimes, to do that. And so if it's affordable and works in your plan, we generally recommend transferring some of that risk. The reason being, someone mentioned, I don't remember if it was you, Cynthia, but $8,000 a month. How many of you have an extra $8,000 a month built into your financial plan just in case for some indeterminate amount of time? If you do, hats off. But most people can't plan for some crazy additional expense. So just like with everything else, you buy homeowners insurance because if your house burns down, you don't want to have $400,000 sitting on the sideline, or 300 or 200, depending on how much your house is, to go try and replace and rebuild your home. So you go, I'm going to pay X amount of dollars per month, and if something happens, the insurance company pays for it. Same idea with long-term care. That the difference is the probability of you going in and needing care is significantly higher than the probability of your house burning down. So we've got, we don't just have one product. We shop between all of the available products. And if there's one that works, we can normally find it, but it has to be affordable and it has to be appropriate for you based on your current situation. Yeah, like Hunter was saying, we always recommend if you, Cindy, if you just want to look at what it costs and what it's like, we're happy to show you those options, but you certainly don't need to. It's just sometimes people have no idea. Does it cost me $4,000 a year, or 10 grand a year, or $100 a month? And it really depends. So obviously, Hunter can help you out with that.
Yeah. Cynthia, if you want to private message me or fill out that survey and just leave your contact info, we can talk about it in more detail if that's something you think you want to do.
Well, again, thank you, Hunter, and thank you, Sean, for helping answer those questions. If you're having problems with the form, or if you would like the form emailed to you, just email us at mwrbattlecreek@dla.mil. We can do that and also send you the presentation. And for those of you, it also will be on our MWR videos page, so you can view it again at your leisure. And thank you guys very much. We really appreciate having you, and thank you.
Thanks, Kate. I will say one more thing. We will appreciate, I really do appreciate it for feedback, whether you want to be contacted or not. That feedback helps kind of determining our next presentation and where we think we should be heading with it. Right now we did Social Security and we did understanding the TSP, and now we're back to power planning. So if there's something specific you like, just put it down, or something maybe you want to hear about. That'd be extremely helpful in that feedback. And that way we can gear it more specifically towards things probably you want to hear, as opposed to taking a stab in the dark. So if you wouldn't mind filling that out, I'd really appreciate it. Other than that, thanks for joining. Thank you, Kate. Sean, thanks for
Yeah.
answering those questions for us.
Yeah, thank you. Everybody have a great day. Don't forget about Project Kindness, call for photos, and we hope to see you next time.